Thank you for joining us wherever you're watching this video recording. My name's Damien Trubsole. I'm Head of Investor Relations at Rapid Response Revival. Joining me for the presentation today is Simon Wotherspoon, Corporate Strategy Manager, and Scott Casey, who's the Chief Information Officer and Chief Technology Officer of Rapid Response. Leading the presentation today will be Simon Shields, our non-executive director with a commercial focus, and I'll pass on to Simon to begin the presentation for us. Thank you, Simon.
Thanks for that, Shrub. Yes, so as you're all aware, sudden cardiac arrest is pretty much the leading cause of death. It's as much as all the cancers put together. It's about 1 in 5 of deaths in any 1 year, the majority of these happening outside of hospitals. And that's despite the amount of work that's gone into getting public access defibrillators out there. Clearly, it's not solving the problem. It's not solving the problem because they're not handy enough when you need them, and they're not easy enough to use. And so this is what we've addressed with the CellAid. It's also affordable, and it's a connected device. It's a top-of-the-range device. And so we've designed it to address this issue of the #1 killer, and with the aim of saving lives. We've begun the clinical trials already, and we've proceeded with success in those trials. At the same time, we're very, very pleased to say that we've got our certification in Europe, our CE mark for Europe, which means that not only can we sell in New Zealand and the Middle East, but also into Europe and some other countries that accept the CE mark. And over the last few years, we've worked hard to establish demand for the product. In fact, we've had overwhelming interest from distributors around the world and from the medical profession as well. And that's really encouraged us in terms of pushing ahead with the scale of development that we've been able to achieve. We have manufacturing facilities, not just in Australia, but also being rapidly developed in Taiwan with a major global company who also makes medical devices, amongst other things, and they're very keen and they're pushing ahead for us. On to the next slide. The business was founded by Don Casey following an incident with his wife where she had a cardiac arrest, and he was the man on the spot. And fortunately, she survived that incident. But, you know, that drove him to think about what it would take to have a defibrillator handy, because there wasn't one when she had her cardiac arrest. I suppose necessity is the mother of invention, and that is what's driven Don to think about what it would take to solve the problem. And that's where we are today. If you go to the next slide, Shrub, the big issue is that for every minute that goes past when somebody's having a cardiac arrest, there is a 10% less chance that they will survive. And by the time the ambulance gets there, which is typically around 10 minutes after the event starts at the very earliest, the chance of their survival is extremely low. And that's why the survival rate of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest is generally less than 10%, but more usually in most countries down around the 2 or 3%. The solution, of course, is something that's affordable, ubiquitous, easy to use. You can see the instructions on the front there, snap, peel, stick. It's as simple as that. As long as you put that generally in the right place, you should get a very good result. It's much cheaper than what's available at the moment. And the reason why we've been able to do that is because of the innovations that are into this device. We've used modern materials that have been developed over the last 5 to 10 years that really have helped with energy density and energy efficiency. That energy efficiency has been improved by us in terms of what we've been able to bring to this device and have patented by the way we've dealt with the capacitors in the device, which is very different from how traditionally it's been done for defibrillators, but is in common with how capacitors have been used in some other applications for other industries. The other really big improvement that we've made that's allowed us to drop the issues around energy has been that, and price, is that it's a single incident event. That's not to say it's not a multi-shock event. It can shock multiple times per incident. But the fact that we're building it just for one event and don't have to make it robust so that you replace the batteries and the pads and it's ready to go for a second event at a later date means that we've taken a lot of cost out. We've also taken other functions out, such like training functions out of this device. As a result, our device is much, much cheaper, but it's still a top-of-the-line device. There are very few defibrillators out there today that have Internet of Things and GPS in the device, yet we have them in ours, and that's very important for our communication. First of all, in making sure the device is always working, but secondly, in terms of what happens when there is an incident and being able to get the data from that incident, and also ultimately to be able to speed up the response by the emergency services when there is an incident. It had all the features that you'd expect in an automated defibrillator, and in particular those prompts for the user, making it very easy to use. Next slide. Shrub, now it's your turn to speak about the industry. You're on mute.
Let me put my microphone on. Sorry, technology. Yes, the competitive landscape. Rapid Response has been keenly researching ever since Donovan established that the problem needed a solution, and the landscape has evolved rather slowly over time, at least from the perspective of the major players whose primary focus is to supply hospitals and emergency services. In the current environment, the public access AED market, which Rapid Response is effectively targeting, is estimated by ourselves based on analysis of the publicly available information of approximately $4.5 billion US on an annual basis. We have been working over the last 5 and almost 6 months with our appointed corporate advisor, Ancura, to test, validate, and verify all of the assumptions that the company makes when it comes to assessing our strategies, the success of implementing those strategies, and a lot of what follows in this presentation has been run through that verification process. So one of the reasons that the competitive landscape is evolving so slowly is because the existing players do not think it's an exploitable economic market. And that's was highlighted when Physio Control's president and CEO highlighted that he only believed the market was 15% penetrated as it is, and that they weren't improving the technology which has been in existence for many decades because they didn't see an economic benefit to them, not a community benefit as a primary driver. So what we see going forward is a divergence. Those manufacturers will continue to focus on hospitals and emergency services where they can put bulk product into those kinds of customers, while ourselves will look to target the end user, the individual who unfortunately is the most likely person to suffer from a cardiac arrest. That gives us an opportunity to exploit a market where those people can mitigate their own circumstances with a personal purchase and have a personal device. You can see on the right there, part of that research identifies where the current market sits in terms of 2 primary drivers of the market, and that is low weight and low price. The CellAid is very highly rated against those 2 criteria, and you can see the existing market with the Philips Zoll and Physio Control products much less situated in the key areas that customers are looking for. Just to highlight that, on this page, you'll see the device that's next to the pen, which is a Schiller device designed not for lay people or public access, but for emergency services providers. That device is currently the smallest available in the market. And while standard devices cost anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000, the Schiller device costs $5,000. So as they've improved the technology, they've also moved the price significantly away from the target market that Rapid Response is targeting. For that, I'll hand back to Simon to move on to who's managing this business.
Thanks for that, Shrub. Yeah, we've done a lot of work on the board of directors over the last few years. Obviously, started with Errol and Don, who founded the company and invented the device. John Haynes came on board not long after, and John has worked for many, many years in emergency services as a paramedic, and then supplying consumables and his own textbook on first aid to the industry. Has been a fantastic supporter and a major shareholder of the company. Preparing ourselves for IPO, we've been widening out the board to cover off on areas where we felt we needed some heavyweight assistance. And Greg Bodkin has come on board from Cochlear, and he's been terrific in the insight that he's brought to help us with our manufacturing agreements and quality control and things we need to think about in that respect. Robbie Karp, likewise, but from an IT point of view. Robbie's got his own IT software company where he specialises in medical devices, and he's been able to give us a lot of help in terms of thinking about things that we need to in order to bring the totality of the internal software and the software that communicates to the cloud for the device. Finally, James Orlando, an ASX experienced CFO, has come in to chair our risk and audit committee, and in particular at the moment where he's leading the look for a CFO, which we hope to announce in the near future for the company. The total addressable market of the business is a very important metric for investors. Ultimately, we start off with this business that is looking to establish itself, but how big potentially can the business grow? Well, in our case, it could become very large indeed, because what we're looking at is a device that ultimately could be available for every home, in every vehicle, and in every business premises. And we know by looking at countries around the world, for every head of population, there is 0.4 of a home, there is 0.8 of a vehicle, and there is 0.1 of a business. That means that potentially for every head of population in the country, we could be selling 1.3 devices. And when you look at the number of people in the United States, the number of people in Europe, we're talking about getting up to about 1 billion devices just between those two major economic regions. To do that, of course, we've got to enter markets. And the first market we're entering is New Zealand, where we're currently doing the bulk of our trials, and we are actually allowed to sell devices already. Likewise, the Middle East in Dubai has been a market we've spent a lot of time. It will also be one of our early or beta markets that we roll out into. But the first major market will be following our CE mark going into Europe. And the person in charge of that entry is Scott Casey, who's ideal because he's able to really get on top of the e-commerce platform that we need to be able to tie it all together, our front end, our back end, and monitor the devices in the hands of the consumers, whether they've come through distributors or directly to us. And so with that, I'll hand over to Scott now to talk about the distribution model.
Thank you, Simon. So with the changing of the paradigm in turning AEDs from, mostly in the hands of trained professionals to hitting the consumer market, we also need to look at how we're going to distribute to the market. So we've been tasked with designing and developing a holistic and scalable e-commerce platform quickly, but without creating any legacy or underlying issues we need to fix later. This also needs to integrate into our current systems so as not to create any issues and transfer problems. Building this e-commerce platform will enable us to support our existing channels, but also allows the business to accelerate our future plans to reach our ultimate target, which is the untapped consumer market. The platform empowers everyone to sell the Sell 8, but gives us control over our mission and makes sure that we're selling the way we want to sell. The business needs are quite expansive. Selling into Europe especially, it needs to be multi-region, multi-language capable, which means that even though the CE mark enables us to sell into every jurisdiction inside of Europe, there are local jurisdictional needs as well, and the platform needs to be able to accommodate those. Robust and secure service with the large amount of sales and service of those sales to a much larger customer base than any other AED company has ever seen. The system must be able to keep up. It can't afford to crash. And we want to make sure that the customer experience of using the system is seamless and pleasant. The system must also be able to keep and secure the customer data, being fully compliant to GDPR, which is the regulatory requirements for customer privacy in Europe. It's also the high watermark of customer privacy around the world outside of Russia and China. So if we're compliant there, the system should be able to function in any other jurisdiction in the world. We also have a huge focus on the customer journey. As we're doing pre-orders, we need to nurture that customer after they've purchased to make sure that they're not getting disappointed in us while they're waiting for their product to arrive, and making them truly feel like they're part of the mission and they're part of the journey to help save lives in this way. We want them leaving thinking that they love their Sell 8 and that it's a part of their family and the protection of their family. So the system must be able to do everything from marketing and targeting to get those customers to join the mission, but then also making sure that during the whole life cycle of the product, as it is an evergreen life cycle, as we're looking to do a subscription model, that they're always happy with their Sell 8 and with RRR as a company. I think that goes through enough of what we hope to achieve, and I'll pass back to Simon.
Thanks, Scott. This is now for Shrub to talk to the certification pathways.
Thank you, Simon. So for Scott to develop his program for distribution, the company obviously needs areas where it can sell the device. So looking here, we have multiple regulatory priorities. Those priorities are broken into two primary streams: those that require both technical data and clinical data, and those that only require the technical data. So currently we've received clearance in Europe under the CE mark, which is the green box at the top with the tick, and New Zealand we have clearance to sell there. Both those regions do not require clinical. And our next submission into the United Kingdom, which is effectively a direct copy of our previously submitted and awarded CE mark, will be beginning in the coming weeks, and we are looking at hopefully receiving before the new calendar year turns over some kind of positive feedback from that submission and review. The majority of our other submissions and the timelines are relied on the clinical trial data. As Simon pointed out, we have begun the first RAPID 1 studies of using the device in humans. Unfortunately, until it's gone through review by both the principal investigator team and our own internal research clinicians, we're unfortunately not able to provide any public disclosure on those trials, other than to say the patients are going through the process, and those that have completed it successfully from the perspective from the surface. So we'll await those results to be released, and they will form a large part of the initial submissions into the United States, into TGA for Australia, into Taiwan, and into various other markets as we go forward. So I'll hand back. I'll also cover off the intellectual property. Having access to markets is important. Being able to protect that access from competition is also extremely important, and the company has always focused on making sure that our innovation is protected from a patent and design perspective, and also a trademark perspective. Donovan's always been very cognizant of the two primary areas of intellectual property protection, the market that you would least like to exploit, and the areas where competition may be able to manufacture your device. So we're continually evolving those strategies with our legal team, with freedom to operate searches and securing protection across the markets that we require to have that protection. And for the comfort of members, we continue to gain patents across the globe, currently with Australia, the United Kingdom, the United States, Russia, and a number that are in current examination. We hope to increase that patent portfolio significantly over the next little while, and you'll be updated as they end up in our portfolio. With that, I'll move back to Simon for the financials.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, so we've put a lot of work into thinking about what we can reasonably forecast for the business, and this is where the rubber hits the road. We've started with the approvals we've got at the moment and the plans we have in place. We're not thinking about other approvals we might get over the course of the next year or two, just what's in place at the moment. And what sort of manufacturing capacity we need to create. And then off the back of that, what is reasonable for us to judge, not just in the pre-orders, but what's actually going to be shipped. And this is the numbers that we've come up with. You can see that off a fairly modest expectation for the current financial year, we start to ramp up and ship 250,000 new units in FY23. Now, the way those units are being priced is with an upfront payment and a monthly subscription. The upfront payment starts off at a level that covers our cost of goods. As you can imagine, it's more expensive in the initial period, but that cost will come down over time with scale, and will come down as we design the product for cheaper manufacturing and recycling over time. So with a €250 upfront payment into the European Union, and then a €15 per month subscription agreement after that. Now that covers off the communication that we have with the device, with our ongoing monitoring. Also the fact that we will replace the device when it needs to be replaced. But also more to the point, the data capture that we have when there is an incident, and how important that data is for the patient, their next of kin, and the medical professionals. The numbers get very large very quickly, as you can see. Now, we've done these forecasts in US dollars because the components are largely priced in US dollars. And you can see we're getting over 90 million US just on the basis of the 250,000 units in FY23. In Australian dollar terms, that's well over $100 million. But it's an expensive business to get into place. We've got a very large footprint to bring down in terms of people to support what is a consumer device in the market, and also in terms of the regulatory and compliance work that we need to do on an ongoing basis, let alone our ability to improve the device, stay ahead of the competition with the R&D. And that brings us to what we're doing now, talking to you. We're looking to get the capital that allows us to move forward with the business. And Simon Wotherspoon's going to talk to the capital raising we're doing right now.
Thanks, Simon, and hello, everyone. So just to give you an outline of the company's capital raising strategy for the next 12 months leading into the IPO, which is planned for the second quarter of 2022. As we communicated to members in early July, we've reopened the Series E to raise $5 million at $180 per share. That the previous Series E was repriced to reflect the value of the company following the award of the CE mark in late May. with that valuation being set at 220 million Australian dollars, and that represents a 2 times uplift on the valuation from the first round of the Series E. The purpose of this current raise is to provide a working capital buffer to mitigate any timing uncertainties caused by the potential delays to the supply chain, which might impede our ability to manufacture devices in the volumes that we have on order and our ability to deliver to the market. We are targeting to raise $5 million, but this may be upsized to 10 million if that level of demand eventuates, as we've seen many of our existing shareholders referring potential investors to us from their own personal networks of friends and colleagues. A good point to note is that we continue to see high levels of interest in all our capital raising rounds from medical professionals and specialists and clinicians, and many of those have become shareholders, and that's a very pleasing validation of our company's mission and also our capabilities. As I mentioned, the current round was open on the 2nd of July, and we've received commitments for around about $1.5 million so far, which is a very pleasing outcome. So that will lead into the next step, which is a Series F. That'll be a pre-IPO institutional size raise. So as an outcome of our ongoing budgeting and planning for future expansion, we're planning to raise up to $70 million Australian to provide the necessary funds to scale up the business in terms of staff numbers and infrastructure to be able to meet the expected demand following on from the CE Mark award and the rollout of the e-commerce platform. The raise will be targeted towards institutional and professional investors, both in Australia and offshore. And of course, existing shareholders will be offered the opportunity to participate in the raise. Timing of the raise will coincide with the launch of the e-commerce platform in Europe and the rest of the world, and also with the release of the information to the extent we can around the first stage of RAPID-1 clinical trials. And the passing of these two milestones will further de-risk the company and support a higher valuation for that Series F raise. But that flows through into the IPO, which, as I said, is planned for the second quarter of 2022. We have commenced discussions with our prospective investment banking and broking partners, and we're working with advice from our corporate advisor, Ankura. Now, to put some numbers around the expected valuation of the business at the time of the IPO, obviously a lot of water will flow under the bridge over the next 12 months and nothing is absolutely certain. But just to put into context what's framing our thoughts of how the company will look at that time, we look to the revenue forecast numbers on page 17 there of the members' presentation. And it's important to note in financial year 23, the makeup of those revenue is not only of that revenue is not just book sales revenue from device deliveries, but also recurring revenue from monthly subscription fees and also revenue from firm purchase orders which have been taken and deposits paid, which give a clear line of sight to revenue in a forward order book. So that number stated forecast there for FY23 by being $92 million, which the current FX rate translates to 122 million Aussie. So we've done a considerable amount of research on valuations of listed companies that are comparable to us and trading on the ASX and US stock exchanges. And that group of companies currently trading at enterprise value to revenue multiples in the range of 13 to 17 times. So if we apply those multiples to our FY23 forecast, you can see it would indicate a valuation well north of $1 billion, and that's what we're working towards achieving. And so if we bring that back to the current raise and the price that we're offering shareholders at the moment, using the same metrics, that would represent a multiple of around 1.8 times the EV to revenue multiple that's used on those revenue forecast numbers. And that creates a pretty attractive offer in terms of an ROI for the next 12 months for investors taking up the current offer in our mind. So I hope that provides a good overview of what we're working towards over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Simon. This next slide goes to some of the assumptions that we've used. I'm not going to spend much time on this. It's got currencies and so forth. Suffice to say that, we've done a lot of work so that we're in a position to justify to institutional shareholders and the brokers who are going to take us through to IPO when they do their due diligence, the credibility of the numbers. And we've been having assistance from our corporate advisors, Ancura, to help us with that. Of course, with the CFO coming on in the near future, that'll assist in our ability to justify the plans as well. Moving on to the next slide. We talk to the milestones here, and who better to talk to them than the founder himself, Donovan Casey, who is available right now when he comes off mute.
Thanks, Simon, and apologies for not being in person, but I'm in the office with face mask, and makes it easier to not have people look at my rough exterior at the moment. So in 2020, we used the global pandemic to bring home our manufacturing capability, product development, and further our regulatory understanding. In 2021, we are similarly using to our advantage the impending global supply chain disruption to enable launch of a direct pre-sales by the European e-commerce subscription model platform. This will allow us many advantages. It'll allow us time to refine the back-end subscription architecture and development. It allows time for us to develop online training and the customer skills acquisition platform. It allows us time to set up a European support office with its associated personnel. It allows us time to gauge consumer market acceptance across the very diverse market segments. It allows us to test the effectiveness of our marketing strategies across the various owned and earned communication channels, which further allows for analysis and improvements before moving on into bought channels. It allows us to drive market ahead of the scaled wholesale distribution partnerships. It allows for a long window of preparing usability challenges of the large number of various languages and cultures and business regulations. It'll allow for the pre-orders to strategize commencement of increased scale manufacture. In other words, seeding our manufacture in a controlled uptick environment. It'll allow for a significant pre-IPO valuation, which is really important, having those firm numbers. It'll allow for a longer period to engage and sift through resellers into evolving into a future distribution type partnership agreement status. It'll allow for time to set up fulfillment and the post-market surveillance infrastructure. It'll allow us to build the platform to enable deployment into other market expansions of New Zealand, UK, Australia, India, Taiwan, and the Middle East, and ultimately the US and Canada the year later. It'll allow the platform to by starting early, to improve from the minimal viable product of the September rollout. It'll allow us to take advantage of that first market mover status of something so significantly different. So when asked the question of what is the major imperative this year in the company mission, it's to commercialise, and the best way to commercialise for us with the current challenges in the world is for this pre-sale e-commerce platform. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Don. Well, thank you all for tuning in and hearing this presentation from us. We're looking forward to this very exciting development in the life of the company, moving into the commercialisation phase. And we're hoping for you to come along with us on this journey and really enjoy the fruits of what is turning out to be a very significant product in terms of changing people's lives for the better.
Thank you, Simon. And I'll just close for anybody watching this video. If they'd like any further information, please contact Simon Wotherspoon or myself at Rapid Response with any written questions. And we're also available if you'd like to drop us a call. But thank you for watching, and we will be in touch with further member updates as and when we get the news to update our members with. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.